All right, everybody, here we go. It's the first time ever. ITK Radio. That means in the know. My dad texted me the other day. He's like, what does ITK mean? ITK means in the know. And joining us on this first ever broadcast, the one and only Melissa Anderson. How's it going?
It's going great, Mark. I didn't know before you signed me up that I was going to be the first one, so I'm really trepidatious, but excited at the same time.
Trepidatious. That's a good academic word. Now, this is going to be great. I had to go to a pro. I had to go to somebody I know. And you were the first one to say yes. So those three things added up. Here we are. I should say, Melissa and I've known Melissa since the aughts. We worked together at a trade association, which was a lot of fun. Quite interesting. One of those guys now is Lieutenant Governor of Oklahoma, which is so wild. What a team. What a boss. That was quite an experience. Do you have any comments about our time working together?
Well, it was super fun. I think, actually, I'll just say that DC is sort of where I got my start in communications. I did a lot.
Right.
I was working on a craft grant in Chicago for a little bit, and moved over to DC and started with you all. And I think it was a great trial for any young professional wanting to get their start in comms, because you really learn how to fight for share of voice. And I think that was fun, learning all the tricks of the trade.
Yeah, you're spot on. There's so much media here in town, and and it's a good place to meet young, crazy, intense people like your boss, Ed. But let's jump ahead. I've been following your career. This is your third university. You have this amazing title. You're the Vice President of Marketing, Communications, and Strategic Initiatives at the College of Wooster, but you've also been affiliated with Ripon College in Wisconsin and the University of Wisconsin in Madison.
Go Badgers.
The Badgers, go Badgers. This is your third university, like you're full on part of academia royalty. Talk about how did you make the leap from kind of nonprofit, for-profit, public, to kind of jumping into the university space? I mean, I love universities. I love colleges. It just seems like a dreamy place to live and work. Just being around young people, great college settings, and you made the leap. It's cool.
Thanks. Well, I think it was more of, I was in DC, and it was 2007, 2008. And I'm from the prairie, Wisconsin. And when I would come home, the realities of the recession were quite in your face and real. And, I juxtaposed that to what I was doing, right? Putting on a fancy suit and schlepping all around town to happy hours and different things like that. And while I thought it was really important work, I don't know, I was kind of missing a little bit of the authenticity. And, when you're from Wisconsin, they always say you go home at least once. So I did that.
Right.
And I think as I was kind of looking for my next step, I really learned a lot in DC, and I'm so fortunate for my time there. And I'm really fortunate to have you had mentioned my boss, Ed, and I think about him a lot because he made me cry a lot, and, made it look like blood on the page when we were going through our editing process. But I am so fortunate to have had somebody like him to work with and learn from. I learned so much from him. And so I think I was prepared to kind of apply my skills in a way that was a little bit more mission driven. Right. So,
right.
Looking at higher education, it was cool. And it was, it turns out that it was also an opportunity for entrepreneurial, work. So it was a lot of innovation in higher ed at the time. Social media was new. Marketing was a new concept in many ways. So.
Yeah, I know, it's funny. I tell people this, like the iPhone. So Obama announced this for his presidency in 2007. Obviously, the election's in 2008. So he actually announces for president before the iPhone is out. Right. So I'm like, this is like such nascent technology. Anyways, so I think you went to Madison first. Is that right? You went to the business school, and then you were part of the rebrand. With your BlackBerry. I know. I love it. But you were part of the rebrand there, right? And the Wisconsin Business School. I love business schools. Can you talk about that experience?
Yeah, it was really great. I mean, So we had a great leader there, Mike Knetter, who he was dean at the time. Now he's the CEO of the Wisconsin Foundation, which raises money for the UW system. And Mike, he's an economist, sorry, and he came up with this great idea to get 13 donors to raise money not to name the school after anybody, which was pretty cool. And Freakonomics wrote about it when they had their column in the New York Times. It was really neat. And so instead it was named after the state, right, which has given it so much, and really a symbol of the collaboration and the connection they have with the state. Really kind of follow through that idea, that Wisconsin idea, right, with constant sifting and winnowing for the truth. And so it was really neat, and it kind of opened us up for the next kind of step of collaboration with the greater university, and really kind of pull the great brand awareness that the university had, as well as some of the really great specialized centers that were forming in the business school. So it was really neat.
I think about the Big Ten, obviously now coast to coast. Oh my God, it's like going all the way to LA, which is amazing. Wisconsin flagship school. The enrollment, I'm guessing, I don't know, 70,000, 100,000 with all the different systems, graduates, undergraduates. I mean, it's a huge, huge institution.
Yeah, there are 13 four-year institutions across the state that are publicly funded. At UW-Madison, there's about 47,000 students.
Yeah.
In the last, 5 to 7 years, they went through a process of consolidating some of their 2-year universities, more of a tech schools, into 4-year universities. So, like, for example, you go to the UW Fond du Lac extension, and it's now part of UW Oshkosh, right? So it's starting to say, they had this issue of like, how do we transform students at these 2-year schools into 4-year grads, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, so you start to see some of that throughout the state.
So then you went back to your alma mater, Ripon University. Is it Ripon College or
College?
Ripon College, sorry. Was that just like, I love the school, I went there, I'm touched? I mean,
yeah.
But it must have been quite a transformation for going to this, juggernaut flagship institution to a small liberal arts college. But was it I mentioned that you mentioned mission driven? Did it just seem more natural? Like, this is more genuine, more real? Like, why go to a smaller school?
Well, I'm a Wisconsin girl through and through. And so being at UW-Madison was really a great honor. And it was an honor to kind of work with all my colleagues to form marketing, right? Like at UW, we put infrastructure in place that didn't exist, right? So we built the first web team. We basically got the keys to an office suite and pulled in the brightest folks we could on issues of design and web development, things like that, and kind of built that team. And then eventually we merged it with a very traditional print publication group to create more of an integrated marketing communications team. And so in July of 2012, we had a new president start, Zach Massetti at Ripon College, who's great. And he had worked with like Judy Woodruff, he had been in media for a while, right? And so we are getting ready to launch the first major public comprehensive campaign that the college had launched in 40 years.
Wow.
And at the time, we didn't have a marketing team, really. We sort of had these 2 or 3 individuals who were, doing a little bit of writing and publicity and maybe the college magazine, and then coaching, right? Coaching sports. And so it just wasn't conducive to what we needed at the time. And we were trying to build up the team. And so I met over there and went through the interview process. And I think afterwards, I came back out to DC and looked at the reflection pool for a few hours. And I said to myself, is this what I want to do? And so eventually I came back to Wisconsin and took that job. And it was 7 years, and we built a lot of stuff. We built probably one of the best, athletic facilities in Wisconsin in D3. So the Wilmore Center. And that was just really rewarding. And it actually followed a school you probably are familiar with, a school that my boss Ed went to, Adrian College, where
right.
When we looked at the economics of building these facilities and how that can have an immediate impact in enrollment. In our case, it did.
So when you going through the Ripon interview process, is it like, oh my God, this to-do list is massive? Or did you show up on day, did you show up and say, oh my gosh, these people need to do 47 things? Or was it a little bit of approaching it listen, I can solve your problems? Or is it or do you show up and try to learn what the problems are and then propose a path forward?
Yeah, I think, well, there's certain issues that of going into things. And then as you kind of peel back the onion and, as the academic year, et cetera, evolves, other things start to pop up and become issues. And so I think for me, I've always been it's always been pretty second nature, putting in organizational structures and, setting up systems to work. I know academia pretty well at this point, as you said.
Right.
It's my third rodeo. But I think for us, in higher ed, it's a lot of listening. It's a lot of trying to assess, staff aptitudes, skills, and abilities, what they desire to do. You have to look back at the history where staff provided the professional development that they needed along the way. How did we get here? Is this something we have time to, is there ways that we can align staff so that they can live their best selves and also, align with the college's goals and objectives? I think a lot of times you'll see in higher ed, right, the budget. So especially in small liberal arts college, a lot of times marketing budgets are tucked up underneath admission, right?
Okay.
And so it makes it really difficult for a centralized marketing officer to really make decisions that are in the best interest of the college, because you're not always working with the budget that you need. So I think part of it is, understanding what's going on, understand what's working, what's not, and then looking at building budgets that serve all of campus, right? Because I think a lot of times in higher ed, we're really, really, really focused on getting those students in, but we're not paying attention, or at least we're not paying as much attention to what their experience is when they get here, right? And part of that is clear communication, building the brand from the inside out. So we've done, brand revamps at, UW, Ripon, and here. And I think in all of those cases, it's really essential to think about building the brand from the inside out.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that that budget was in admissions, because that to me seems like, listen, we have one job, get the kids on campus and then sort it out. But now there's obviously, I feel like there's much more of a transition to lifetime learning, going back to school, different life cycles, even as an alum, auditing classes. So that's really telling that just that transition to be communications isn't a one-off thing. It's a whole ecosystem of activity. So 7 years at Ripon, and then how did you get to the College of Wooster in Ohio? Were you recruited, or were you oh my God, I got to do one more university, one more college?
Well, I think after 7 years, at Ripon, I had started as I think the first executive director of marketing and communications. And then my boss, who was running, I had reported into advancement, and which worked well because we were about ready to launch that campaign. But when he left, we were in the middle of, we had just finished 5 years of campaign for this, comprehensive campaign, and we were spinning off into a spin-off campaign, not to use the same words, but whatever, for this athletic facility. And so someone had to run it, and I was tapped to do that. So I became, in addition to that role of marketing, I became the interim VP for advancement and took the lead on the campaign for the Wilmore Center. And that was great and all. And then after that, I was like, yeah, I like fundraising. I love interacting, but I'm not sure that I want to do fundraising, for life, right? Like, it's a great campaign, but I want to be in marketing communications. And so they created a job called Vice President for Marketing Communications, and I oversaw that. And then underneath us was IT and the bookstore, and trying to think of anything else, kind of some auxiliary stuff.
Right.
And so after that, so that was like a little over 3 years in that role. I kind of was like, it's time for me to kind of get to the next thing. I wanted to come in and do more work with the brand, and not so much of everything else. And so I knew from a prior supervisor that, like, this job was open here at the College of Wooster, and that they were looking to centralize marketing for the first time. And I thought, well, I can do that. I'm not afraid, because it's a lot of work.
Right. Yeah,
I'm not afraid.
Sure.
So that's the first thing. And then when I came to visit, it was like really just a wonderful kind of place, right? Like, it was very diverse. They had a lot going for them. Some really great signature programs that there's a lot to sell, let's just say. And I really thought that this could be a cool place. I didn't know how long I'd be here, but I definitely saw myself like, oh, I can help. And I think, the president at the time, she's now left to be the president of Ripon College in Walla Walla, Washington. But it was a great experience, and it's been a great experience. Just,
before
COVID hit.
Yeah, because you joined
hit.
You joined like 2019, and then the spring of 2020. Oh my gosh, what a crazy experience! We're still dealing with that now. And then before we hit record, I was just projecting. We were talking about the different, as communicators, we think about the different targets, different audiences, and for some people, it's just talking to the media. And oftentimes it's just saying no comment, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like when you're running a communication marketing effort for a college, there must be 7 or 8, maybe 10 different constituencies you got to deal with. Everybody from the students, the faculty, the administration, alumni, the local community, prospective students. It's a really rich, different basket, and they all different needs and different challenges, and they all probably want to receive communications differently. So, oh my gosh, what a load of fun.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like a sympathy. Yeah, you're right. Like a question, but so just like, if you think about this short span of time, so when I started in August 2019 to now, we're finishing up August 2022, we've had just a litany of things that really put what you were saying in under the microscope, right? Like the in March of 2020, we had to continue focusing on marketing. We were still working on the rebrand that we launched in August of 2021 with all the new websites and everything like that through COVID. But while we were doing that, we completely switched to this like 24/7 customer service info situation, right? Where, we needed to provide immediate answers, whether via town hall, email, phone calls, etc., websites, building out websites for COVID and so on and so forth, and changing guidelines. It seems like, regular emails every week. it just became, it was just a lot, right? And I think you realize that through that process, right, that education was really, really important to these families and to our students. And, you started to see kind of the impact of this isolation, right? The impact of going remote, the impact economically to a lot of our families through the pandemic. And it really pulled into question of like, how does a college thrive and at the same time make sure to take care of its people.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned the 24/7 aspect of the communication like effort now that you're dealing with. Do you think that's a natural progression that was just accelerated by COVID? Like, do you just feel these different constituencies, like they're so used to instant communications because of the smartphone or whatever, that as a communicator, you just got to be like, this is the world we live in. It's 24/7, and you got to find multiple different ways to communicate with folks. Was that accelerated by COVID, or do you think that's just a natural where the world's going?
Yeah, I mean, I think there, we talk about distracted audiences, but we also have to remember that, people have a lot of things going on in their lives. And for a lot of institutions, especially, small liberal arts colleges, email still remains sort of this primary mode of communication. While our constituents, our main constituents, which are the students, are moving further and further away from that being their main mode of communication. So we've got that initial issue that we have to kind of work through of like, how do we make sure that our constituents are hearing our guidelines, our messages, whatever it is that we're sending out, and that they have a chance for dialogue, right?
Right.
And so we're still kind of working through that, I think, as an institution, make sure that we have the technology that we need to reach students. I mean, here, just one case, like where a student in the before times, right, could just go and get a one-on-one mentoring or advising appointment, whether they're, having trouble with class or, other issues, maybe need an accommodation. All of that had to be completely transformed online like that, right? And so as we rolled out, and I think we did a pretty good job here to do that in 2020, providing opportunities through Zoom, through Microsoft Teams, et cetera. There's just, things that we forget, right? That like, we probably need to think about reminding people, as much as we say what we're going to say, and we feel like we're saying it over and over again, our audience isn't hearing it. Maybe it takes at least 3 times. So I think it's just over communication is probably, something that we all need to kind of strive for. And in particular, trying to find ways outside of electronic communication to make sure that that we're here, that we heard you, right? And part of kind of issue mitigation, right, is like, having that initial contact with someone who may be having a bad day or a hard time, and how do we kind of deal with that?
Yeah, no, I like that. So it's like over communicate is a good thing, and listening is part of the communication process. It's not just a one-way street. That's really good insights.
Yeah, and it's like, there's so many issues that everyone's coming with, whether, they're trying to put on an event, but we have all this red tape that doesn't allow their particular caterer to come in. Well, it might be really important for this group for that kind of catering. How do we make that happen, right?
Right.
And so there's just like on the academic side, right, through COVID, we had a lot of rules where, or pre-COVID, we had a lot of rules of like, these papers are due at this time, grades are due at this time. And I think we had a lot of great advocates among our faculty and among our administration who push to kind of say, hey, this isn't realistic in COVID times, right? And
Yeah.
to try to make that a little bit easier. So I think we can constantly do that, and constantly do that better.
Well, Melissa, thank you so much for being the first guest.
No problem.
I was going to say, like, we ask all our guests the same question, which I'm thinking about right now. Like, I want to do something light. You'll be the first person, so I can't say this will work, and it's unprompted. So if you don't have a good answer, we can edit this out. But just something fun or frivolous, like, you know, what you're reading or watching, something that's been, and it doesn't have to be highfalutin. It can be lowbrow, Bravo. Like, I'm desperate to watch Selling the OC.
Oh, really?
On Netflix. Well, when I say desperate, I mean,
oh my gosh.
There's such pressure now, I feel, with media. It's like everything's got to be so intellectual all the time. I'm like, listen, man, I just want to watch Bravo. I just want to watch Below Deck. Anyways, do you have anything fun or you've been reading or watching?
Well, I love Loot. So
Loot's been good. Yeah, I agree.
And I'm dying for the next season of the morning show and Ted Lasso to come out. So that's,
my God, you're like on brand, Apple TV.
Yeah, I know. And I
you're like speaking of a marketing dream, you're like nailed it. Apple TV, boom, boom.
Yeah.
What about Severance?
You know, I started watching that, and it just, I don't know, it felt a little bit like Mary Trump's book. So I was just I have read like you know, anything about this whole, it's a little too much.
Not with you. I was with Severance. I was just like, I get enough stress in my life.
My mind for the future.
Yeah. All right, that was great, Melissa. You're a champ. Thanks for making time. Hopefully, we'll see you soon in Northeast Ohio.
All right, sounds like a plan.
I love the new logo, by the way. If this is new, it's classic.
It is. Yeah, thank you. We tore apart our beloved tartan and you know, deconstructed it and made it into our logo. So
no, I love it. As a Scotsman myself, I love a good tartan. So nice work.
Nice. Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Talk to you soon. Ciao.
Bye.